Welcome to Series 1 of the Latte Lounge podcast. Join me, Katie Taylor, as we talk balancing hormones, busting myths, breaking taboos, boosting libidos, and bolstering confidence. Why not grab a coffee, take a seat, and join us in the Latte Lounge as we chat all things midlife, menopause, and beyond. With thanks to our friends at Silk Natural Lubricant for making this podcast possible. Hi everyone. Well, you may be out walking the dog, or maybe you're on the tube right now, or on the bus, or just at home. But whatever you're doing right now, I just wanted to say hi, I'm Katie. And I'm going to start this first episode by just sort of telling you really a little bit about my own perimenopause experience, what I've learned along the way, and hopefully it'll be really helpful for you to understand why I set up the Latte Lounge. So as I'm chatting to you now, I'm 53 and it's June 2022. Hopefully you'll be listening to this in the future too. I've been married for, 30 years now. My husband really must have the patience of a saint after everything I've been through and everything I've put him through. I've got 4 kids. I've got a daughter who's 25 at the moment, and I've got 3 boys who are 18, 20 and 23. And they're a little bit less patient about some of the stuff I talk about, and they're really embarrassed as well. But hey, let's kick to it. So let's rewind to my 30s, early 40s. I really actually enjoyed being a stay-at-home mum with my 4 young kids. Everyone used to sort of say, I don't know how you do it. And I don't know how I did either, but I actually really thrived on sort of having a big family, and I was fairly organized and routine. So as long as everything sort of kept within those routines, it was pretty much straightforward. I had a really nice job working in charity comms. And, I was busy, running a home and just sort of keeping everything ticking over. So it was all going really, really well. I was, pretty outgoing, energetic, as I said, sort of organized and capable, sort of fun-loving mum, really. And I had really good friends and a nice community around me. So, nothing really fazed me too much. And life was pretty good. Actually, my happiest moments were when I was walking the kids to school with my friends in the morning, and we'd sort of chat, drop the kids off, and then we'd run off and start our day. And I really did thrive on that routine. I did until one day. I remember we'd walked home and I noticed that my car wasn't in the drive. And I turned to one of my friends and I said, oh my God, someone's stolen my car. And we were looking around the road, and it took me about 10 minutes to rack my brains. And then I suddenly blurted out, oh my God, what am I like? I just remembered that I'd driven to school that day as I was in a hurry for a meeting, and I'd actually left my car at school on purpose so I wouldn't be late. Anyway, she looked at me and she laughed, and I had to run all the way back to school to the car. So obviously I ended up being very late for work. I was actually a bit embarrassed though, and I wasn't actually the first time that had happened. And as I hit the age of about 43, I also began to struggle with so many other weird symptoms. I had very, very low mood, and my usual sort of bubbly, outgoing, capable persona was slowly replaced with low energy, brain fog, severe anxiety. And I also found myself crying for no obvious reason. But, as a mum of 4 kids, I just sort of put it down to juggling my family and home and my job. But I was hit with insomnia, and I spent the next 4 years trying to function on just 3 hours sleep a night. Each day, I remember I'd wake up and get dressed in a bit of a daze. I had a sort of feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach. I desperately didn't want to go to work, and even putting on my shoes and walking the kids to school, I promise you, it felt like I was climbing Mount Everest. It was like a sort of fog, and I was sort of walking in sticky treacle, and I felt, I don't know, like not discombobulated, but kind of disconnected with the world around me. Anyway, I remember sort of parking outside the office, and I'd almost sort of weep silently at the thought of the day ahead. And I actually do remember vividly when I hit my lowest point at work. My boss had called a budget board meeting. I was working at a children's charity then, and it was a fairly new job for me, and I was really excited. And that day, he plonked a huge file on my desk ahead of this meeting, and he wanted me to sort of go through it all and plan our marketing budgets for the coming year. Now, normally that's a task that wouldn't have fazed me, but when I opened the file, I was absolutely overwhelmed with anxiety. It was like reading a document in a different language almost. My brain kind of couldn't compute. It couldn't commute either, but it couldn't compute what I needed to do. I just sort of felt like a total fraud. I was terrified of somehow being found out. And I imagined a room full of people just staring at me whilst I tried to string a sentence together. Just before that meeting, I ran to the toilets and I rang my husband crying, saying that I just can't do this job. I can't go in there. They shouldn't have hired me. I'm not experienced enough. And he was understanding, and he tried to reassure me and calm me down, and saying, obviously maybe I'm just overwhelmed by this new job, but I should have confidence in my own abilities. But rather than put myself through that embarrassment, I don't know what came over me, but I just panicked. And I remember I knocked on my boss's door and said that I thought I had food poisoning and that I desperately needed to go home. When I got home, I actually called my doctor. I explained what I was feeling, and I just thought, I don't want to work anymore. I can't do this. And I actually emailed my boss after I'd spoken to my doctor. I couldn't face the humiliation of having to go back in and go through something like that again. I thought I was going mad. It never entered my head that this was hormonal, as I didn't get those typical hot flushes and night sweats that you hear about. And, I also noticed that I was having other things like heart palpitations, and my periods had become shorter and a lot heavier, and I'd put on a lot of weight. So when I'd spoken to the doctor that day, they said I was probably just stressed and depressed, as I'd been working long hours. I had a very busy family life. And so that was when he suggested that, I should possibly hand in my notice. I went into the practice the next day and I was given antidepressants. I really, really didn't want to take them. I just didn't understand how I could be depressed when I had what I thought was a really good life. I did hold on to them for a few days. I kept them in my drawer and was kind of scared of them. And I kept reading the sort of instructions on the packet and reading all the side effects and just feeling really scared. But in the end, I just thought, I just feel so dreadful, I'm going to take them. But well, they didn't actually make things any better. They just made me feel numb, actually. I just felt like I could get no joy anymore out of life. So I thought, well, look, I put on weight, maybe if I eat better, maybe if I, exercise, maybe I'll just start to feel better. And now the pressure of not working has been taken away for a bit. Maybe it's time to look after me. So I remember, starting all these different weird and wonderful diets and speaking to nutritionists and going to the gym and joining various exercise classes. But I was just so tired, and it wasn't even that I couldn't be bothered. I just genuinely couldn't engage my brain in any sort of new fitness or sort of diet. And the other thing was these heart palpitations were frightening me. And I thought one day I might be having a heart attack. So I went to my doctor again. I was sent to a heart specialist. And overnight, they put me on one of those sort of heart monitors to see what was going on. But actually, after 24 hours, they ruled out any heart condition, said everything was fine. I went back to another doctor because I was worried that I was possibly going through early onset dementia, just sort of forgetting words, forgetting where I'd put things. It was suggested I see a neurologist. The other weird symptom I had was like these aching joints. And a rheumatologist was suggested, but again, couldn't find anything wrong with me. And I'd also seen an orthopedic specialist. So as you can hear, I've sort of, I went back and forward to all these different doctors and specialists with all these different symptoms. And they made me feel like I was a hypochondriac. And I was really ashamed of myself because I'm a doctor's daughter and I'm normally really good with anything health related. And I just thought maybe I'm going mad. Anyway, to cut a long story short, one night I went round to my parents' house and I just broke down. I explained to them that I just didn't know what was wrong with me. I said I wasn't coping with life anymore. But I just said, I don't understand why I'm depressed when I've got such a good life. And I was a bit ashamed of myself because I just thought, well, I've got, such a great life. Well, why am I not coping? And my mum had said she'd noticed I wasn't my usual bubbly self. And my dad, his name is Professor Michael Baum, he's a surgical oncologist specializing in breast cancer. He did what he always does, and he listened intently and made a lot of mental notes. And after we'd had a chat, he turned to me and he said, Katie, I think this is all hormone related. I know you're still having periods and not having hot flushes, but you're in your late 40s now, and I'd like you to go and see a gynecologist who I know who's also a hormone expert. Well, at that point I would have done anything, so I went off to see her, and after giving her about sort of 10 minutes of explaining my story, and she did a few tests, and she said, look, your estrogen levels are on the floor. And she explained that all my symptoms were due to perimenopause and suggested I went on hormone replacement therapy immediately. Now, that was the first time I'd heard the word perimenopause. It was like one of those massive light bulb moments. I had absolutely no idea. She explained that we have estrogen receptors all over our body, and that the reason I was feeling all these different symptoms was because I was basically depleted. And really, I was just blown away. And I thought, wow, there is a reason why I'm feeling all these things. I'm not going mad. And I actually felt quite hopeful that finally someone had got to the bottom of it and was going to help me. So I asked her, what was HRT, hormone replacement therapy? And she said, well, I think we need to first start by stopping the heavy bleeding. So she suggested that I have the Mirena coil to help me stop the bleeding. And also I was becoming very anemic. She said to me that the good thing is that it would stop the bleeding, and it would also act as the progesterone element of the HRT. And then she prescribed an estrogen patch as well. However, nothing with me has been very straightforward. I had 4 unplanned cesarean sections with my babies. And because I had so much scar tissue, she couldn't insert the coil. And the scar tissue was causing a condition called adenomyosis, which was causing the heavy bleeding. For those of you who don't know what adenomyosis is, it's when the endometrium grows into the muscle layer of the uterus. And apparently 1 in 10 women suffer from it, and it can cause very painful periods that also tend to be quite heavy. I mean, for me, there were days when I was literally flooded. I couldn't leave the house, and nothing, no sanitary pads, nothing would stop or protect, me. So there's no way I could have, worn white or even left the house. And the other thing is that I noticed that my ankles started to swell. And my doctor said to me that what she thought was going on was that the sort of bulky womb was restricting my blood circulating effectively through my arteries to my feet. And after a lot of conversations, she basically said, I think we're going to have to do a total hysterectomy. I was absolutely terrified. I did what every other person on this planet would probably do, and I turned to Dr. Google. And there were so many horror stories of women having prolapses and infections and complications post-operation. Some women were saying they no longer felt like a woman, knowing that they didn't have a womb. And I just thought, I just don't want to do this. If anything goes wrong, I've got 4 kids, and I didn't know what to do. But, I knew I'd run out of options as well. And thankfully, being a doctor's daughter, I did eventually come to my senses. I stopped Googling the worst case scenario, and I just focused only on the expert opinions. And between my father and my doctors, they explained that, once I'd had the hysterectomy, because I didn't have a womb, I'd only need estrogen. because the progesterone part of hormone replacement therapy is needed to protect the womb lining from endometrial cancer. And they said, actually, I should feel so much better afterwards. Now, I'll discuss a lot more about why our hormones affect us in this way and how to understand HRT in a lot more detail in the next episode with Dr. Philippa Kay, who's actually the Latte Lounge's resident doctor, menopause specialist. But for now, I just will carry on with my story. So look, it was a major operation, and over the next 6 weeks, I did recover very well. I took things slowly. But once I had recovered from the operation, and obviously my estrogen patches were starting to work, and I'd weaned myself off the antidepressants, I suddenly realized that I was starting to feel like my old self again. And I literally remember how I knew. I was watching a comedy show, I can't remember what it was, on TV, and I started laughing, and my husband turned to me and said, I haven't seen you laugh in years. And I just stopped and I thought, this is the first time in 4 years that I've felt any joy, a natural response to something funny. And he said, I think I've got my wife back. And my kids said, yay, mum's back. And that was a really poignant moment for me. And so the night of that original diagnosis, when I'd come home and I'd sort of done my crying with relief on my bed that I wasn't going mad and there was an explanation for everything I'd been through, I did feel very, very angry as well. So I just kind of felt cross that none of my doctors had sort of joined the dots, that I'd sort of been misdiagnosed with depression, written off as someone who was a bit of a bother. And, and I'd wasted 4 years of really precious life just not living. And that was back in 2016. And I actually couldn't believe that there wasn't any information about what had happened to me. And I couldn't believe I'd never learned about perimenopause. And none of my friends had heard about it either. And none of them even admitted that they were going through what I was going through. I mean, for all I know, they probably were, but they were just too embarrassed to admit to it. So I decided there and then that that's what I was going to do. And I started a Facebook group and a website aimed at women over 40 so that I could share my experience with others and help all those who may also have been in the dark about their own symptoms. Now, you may be wondering why I called it the Latte Lounge. Well, it's because some of the best conversations I've had with my friends have been over a coffee in a local coffee shop. And I wanted it to feel like a sort of virtual version of that, where women could come and talk to each other about all of their midlife health and well-being issues, but in a closed and confidential space, in a very non-judgmental way. And when I started that Facebook group, 1,000 people joined that night. I literally couldn't believe it. And I spent days approving member requests. And now we have thousands and thousands of members on our Facebook group and all of our other social channels too. And we talk about all areas of midlife health and well-being, not just perimenopause and menopause. It's a very safe, warm and friendly community, and I'm really, really proud of it. And our followers tell me all the time how happy they are to be part of it. And I'm going to pop the link, obviously, to all our social channels in the show notes afterwards if you'd like to join us. Now, I want to tell you the good news and leave you all with some really sort of positive thoughts. It's now 10 years since I started to first notice those symptoms, and I cannot tell you how amazing I feel now. Having the energy, that brain clarity back, the kind of joy and love of life, and no more heavy bleeding or any bleeding at all. It meant that I could finally engage in a sensible eating and exercise plan. I've now lost all the weight I've held on, and it was 4 stone. And again, I'll share in the show notes afterwards what worked for me. I'm doing this job that I absolutely love, helping thousands of women day in, day out. And I finally got more time now to focus on me and sort of much more self-care and spending time with my husband. And we're planning to hopefully travel more and just live life to the full. Midlife can be such a liberating and joyful time as long as you can get your hormones balanced and, and maybe just sort of reconnect with the person you used to be. I honestly haven't felt this good since I was in my 20s, and I really want all of you who are listening to feel the same. Now, I don't blame GPs for what happened to me. They've only have 10 minutes to chat to a patient. There's no mandatory GP training in menopause currently, and that's why so many women are just not getting the right diagnosis and treatment when they start to feel these symptoms. And that's why I'm constantly working alongside many other amazing menopause campaigners and public figures who I've met through my work to try and change all that, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I want the Latte Lounge to be a place that you can access help and support and information that helps you to understand and navigate midlife and menopause much more easily. So whether that's on my website, where you can read hundreds of articles and resources and search for a medical specialist, or if you need extra support through my private membership. And through my platform, I raise awareness and funds for our charity partner, the Eve Appeal, which is the UK's gynecological cancer research charity. And they research the 5 main gynae cancers: womb, ovarian, cervical, vulva, and vaginal. So as you can see, I'm absolutely passionate about campaigning and supporting women with their perimenopause and menopause symptoms, as well as all women's health and well-being issues throughout midlife and beyond, so that none of you lot have to suffer like I did. So I can't wait to share the rest of this podcast series with you and introduce you to experts who are going to help you understand perimenopause and menopause and what's happening to your body and mind during this time. I'm also going to be chatting to an amazing menopause fitness guru, a wonderful lady called Amanda Thebe, and she's going to be giving us some very simple midlife nutrition and fitness hacks to help you to feel so much better. So I really hope that by sharing my story in the background to the Latte Lounge, that you may have your own light bulb moment. Please share this episode and all the coming episodes with your partners, your children, your friends and family, so they can understand what's going on. And then they'll be better able to support you. And please do tune in for the next episode with Dr. Philippa Kay, who's a menopause specialist GP, and she's going to be talking about treatment options and helping you to understand why our hormones may be impacting our lives. So until then, thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and would like extra support with managing your menopause symptoms, then why not consider becoming a Latte Lounge member? Members get access to members-only masterclasses with medical specialists and well-being experts, members-only content, how-to guide and resources, plus a chance to connect with other women just like you in a warm, friendly, private community. Podcast listeners get to join for just £10 for the first month. See show notes for more details. Thanks for listening to the Latte Lounge podcast. Please subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss our next episode. For more support with all things menopause and midlife, head to our website lattelounge.co.uk and search for the Latte Lounge group on Facebook. This podcast was sponsored by Silk Natural Lubricant and produced by Emily Crosby Media.